and we finally got some sleep and are feeling slightly more human. So this is the Dive Buddy Resort. We are going to be here all but the last night. We are here because they're a dive resort, so we get unlimited tank fills, we get a vehicle to drive around, they hopefully have coffee, otherwise you're going to see me crying on camera very, very quickly.
Will the coffee be up to Matt's standards, though?
If it is, I'm moving here. Screw Orange County. So the way it works is at 9 a.m. we have a dive briefing and we have to do a checkout dive here, and then we will have our own vehicle and free run the island to shore dive as much as we want. It is in the 80s and Taters is smugly happy about that situation. You just wanted to deny me the AC.
Oh my god.
So we haven't gone to the store or anything, so we are doing their breakfast buffet. As near as we can tell, we think it's 3 a.m. on at least her time. I'm time zone confused after this. That is an island off the, west coast of Bonaire, and some of our dives are going to be over there. And it is bloody hot and humid right at the moment.
It is bloody gorgeous.
It's going to be like 82 to 86. And there was a parakeet, so Jen's happy. Buddy Dive has a couple of different packages available. If you want, you can just stay at the resort and only do boat dives. However, we were excited to go explore the island, so we got the drive and dive package that included a vehicle. The one minor hitch was all of their trucks are actually manual transmission, and neither of us have driven a manual for a long, long time, so we ended up paying an extra $240 for the week to get an automatic. We are very much trying to get bubulated, because I have not had near enough sleep in the last week or enough coffee this morning. The dive orientation was pretty low key. They run them 3 times a day. Basically, you just sit in the area, watch a little presentation, and the biggest thing is just to remind you not to leave anything in any vehicle anytime you camp at a dive site, because break-ins are a very common thing. And then to go over a few basic rules like no gloves allowed, don't touch the corals, etc. As is usual in any sort of diving situation, they require you to do a check dive. It's really easy here since they have their own reef right off the back dock, and basically it's just a chance to make sure all your gear is working since it might have been in storage for a while, and that you have the right amount of weights. They also went over how tank fills worked, which was absolutely freaking glorious. Basically, once you had this card, you could just drive up to the drive-thru and grab 2 tanks a person pretty much any time of day and dive as much as you wanted. Considering the hassle and cost I go through back home trying to get tanks to dive at any given point, I love this feature. They also talked about this kind of definitive shore diving guide. I actually already knew about it and I'd bought it on the Kindle app, which means we could have it on our phone, but I hadn't thought that through. Because we couldn't take our phone with us when we dove, because we couldn't leave it in the car without risking it being stolen, we basically couldn't use that digital version that I'd bought. For the record, if I could do it again, I would have just bought the paper copy and carried it with us. While you don't need it, you can basically just go out and figure out the reef. You go left or right and then turn around when you're about halfway through your tank. It was nice to get an idea of what the dive sites actually involved. The only part of the briefing that was really a surprise for us was the jellyfish alert. Apparently, once a month around the full moon, these jellyfish come up from the deep, and while they're not deadly to humans, they are very, very painful. So while we'd both been chompy at the bit to go night diving, there was an alert out for the next couple of nights, and it was strongly recommended not to dive. Doing some research online, I found out that Buddy Dive was actually somewhat notorious for having more stings than anywhere else in the island due to the fact that their reef had these lights shining down into the water, which would attract the jellies. And with that, after a brief tour, we were free to head back to our room, grab our stuff, and get underwater for the first time since Socorro. Being based out of Southern California, we are used to cold water diving where the water is usually 50 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Here it was 85 degrees. Our normal 7mm exposure suits were going to be way overkill, so we had actually brought the 5mm that we bought for Socorro, figuring that we could use those. We had also heard that, you might want to have a full body wetsuit for the entrances and exits, just because there is fire coral and urchins around. This seemed like a logical plan, but when we got there and we felt the 85-degree water, which was a little bit warmer than it was actually supposed to be, we decided there was no way, and we went with swim trunks, and Jen was in her skin suit. It is hard to express just how satisfying it is to drop your head underwater for the first time in a while and feel that sensation of floating. We had been warned about a coral disease that had basically destroyed all the reefs around Bonaire, so we had pretty low expectations. Honestly, I think the advantage here is I've dove in Florida. This was way better than Florida. There were a lot of dead corals, some of those were really big ones, and it was a bummer to see. Personally, I still found it very much worth diving. Per some locals we talked to, the coral disease has basically run its course. It's gotten as bad as it's going to get, and now they're fully into recovery mode. There is still an ongoing effort to apply antibiotics to some of the corals which are affected, and you will see a whole lot of these coral farms just all over the island where they're working on seeding new coral growth. One of the things we both really enjoy about diving is the feeling of flying that it gives you. Since you're basically in a 3D environment, you can move up and move down at will. So you'll see a lot of shots of us kind of floating off the reef, just enjoying that sensation. I also took the opportunity on this dive to try out the feature of my Apple Watch to work as a dive computer. It did work. The feature does require a daily or weekly subscription in order to enable the dive mode. It doesn't work with integrated air, and overall, I'd just rather dive with my shearwater. Overall, the dive went really well. The only minor hitch we had was our masks kept fogging up. We usually use spit to clear them, but that wasn't working this time. So if you're wondering why Jen looks like she's all swaddled up, that was a birthday present, surf fur. She was using one previously, if you've seen our old dive videos, but that because it was mine. Like, I got it, and she was like, no, don't want to spend money. And then every time we went diving, she would be swaddled in mine, looking like so happy. And I would be doing my best Smurf impression over there, like going hypothermic because I didn't have my jacket. Taters just said something alarming, but when she acts alarming, it's not because there is something wrong. It's because she saw an animal. Jen was all excited to go diving until we started meeting lizards. And it's just like Florida, except I don't think he has to worry about getting cold and falling out of a tree, you know? Mini Godzilla is just trying to sun, Jen. So we are going shore diving. We have our truck, but we're afraid to bring anything, so this is getting filmed on a GoPro. That building over there is where we get our tanks. Our room is over here, so we drive through. We're going to get 2 sets of tanks, and we are only bringing exactly what we need. So other than sunglasses and flip-flops, we don't want to have extra stuff in the car that might get stolen. And here is Taters, having finally found where we parked after wandering around and hoping I didn't notice. So we can't have our phones on here, and that is making navigation extra exciting. So we're just doing an exploratory donkey, flamingo, and goat trip.
Goats! Oh, the goats are so cute.
So apparently we just go out to that marker, drop down, and then we hopefully see fish. We had heard varying things about the difficulty of shore diving. Some people talked about having to climb over rocks or stepping on urchins. We found it to be fairly straightforward, except one little lip about a foot or 2 off the beach. In general, the area right off the beach tends to be white sand with the occasional rock or things that the snorkelers can look at. And then as you go down at 30 feet, you start to get into the soft corals, and then that goes down into more varied corals, all the way down to about 80 or 90 feet in a lot of cases. The depths vary depending where on the island you are. Basically, the entire island is ringed with a reef. Because we were on nitrox, we had to keep it basically above 100 feet, though in reality it looked like 40 feet and up was where the most interesting life was. Unlike Jen, I don't actually own a full-body skin suit, and my rash guards are all short-sleeve. Here, since I wanted my arms covered from the sun, we were able to fortunately buy one at Buddy Dive. For the record, the shirt is yellow and the headband is neon green. You just lose all the reds once you're down this deep. These parrotfish use those huge buck teeth you can see to bite at the rocks. If it's actually quiet enough underwater, you can hear it as their teeth are hitting the rocks. They also just look really, really derpy, which Jen finds endearing. In general, once we passed the band of soft coral, we were on to sand and there was less to see, but every now and then we had something like this big school of parrots come by. Without bulky wetsuits, it was refreshingly simple to switch to another dive site, though normally we do have it a little bit easier just because we can set the tanks on the back of the Jeep. Here we had to either just muscle it up or do what Jen's doing, which is harder than it looks. That diving gear is heavy. For our second dive, we decided to try the Hilma Hooker dive site, which is a wreck. It is this big ship that was sunk years ago after it was captured for marijuana smuggling. You can also see Jen's having to just take the slightest amount of care to get over that step. Each dive site is clearly marked to limit impact, so there's a yellow rock that shows you where to park, another yellow rock that shows you where to enter, and then some buoys that show basically where to start the dive. For this one, I got us fairly close, but we didn't drop down on the line. I figured it was a big boat, how hard can it be to find? Well, you can guess what happened. We ended up dropping down to the second reef and getting to about 100 feet before it became obvious that something was wrong. So I swung us around, we enjoyed the deeper reef, and then headed back into the shallows as we ran low on air. And then, lo and behold. Honestly, I should have known better, but hey, I didn't have a dive site map. I just spent 70 minutes underwater at Alice in Wonderland, and I had that map in my head, so I couldn't quite remember where the boat was. Unfortunately, this meant we didn't have as much time to explore and kind of play around in the wreck as I would have liked. Basically, the deeper you go, the quicker you're going to go through air. This is why you see us passing over the top of the wreck instead of going in and kind of looking in all those dark crevices. We also have to monitor how much nitrogen we're absorbing into our blood. It's a factor of basically pressure and time. This is because if you get too much into it and then you surface too quickly, you can end up with bubbles forming in your blood. Basically the bends that everybody knows from movies. It was still cool, but by the time we surfaced, both of us had decided that we wanted to come back here and do this again properly before we left. We also had our first encounter here with tarpon, which were something that we would become very familiar with in the course of our stay in Bonaire. They're basically these massive fish of like 8 foot long that have a tendency to follow you along, especially at night when you're shining lights around. The shallower you get, the longer you can stretch your air, so fortunately we were able to still play for a good long while in the shallows before we had to surface. Entertainingly enough, when we popped up out of the water, we found somebody was doing a whole DJ influencer video shoot on the shore, complete with speakers, lights, and a drone. So we didn't really capture it before because it was busy coming through here, but this is the fill station. So when it's open, they have tanks. You just show up, pick them up. Everybody's returning right now. They have stations to test, so this is just testing how much air is in the tank for air. The nitrox stations actually get what percentage the gas is. You load it and then you go. And they also have wash bins, and there are even lockers with gear. Okay, first day done. We got 3 dives in, which isn't bad considering we had to sit around and wait for the orientation and do all the stuff to get started the first time. But we were actually trying to rush because we need to get to the store, which closes at 8, because that is our plan to avoid eating at the restaurant every single night. We're currently on a mission to try and get to the store before it closes. But at least we have our phones now, which is a big advantage to earlier. So this seemed like a great idea when we were planning this, because we could just cook and be in our apartment, but we will see. When in doubt, Matt can survive in foreign countries. Jen's laughing, but I haven't even seen that one. And that was an adventure. But hey, 3 dives, got everything oriented. We have our boat dives scheduled. We originally signed up for a boat dive package here because we figured, well, we might as well try it first time, and then we can kind of decide next time whether that's what we wanted to do or if we just wanted to shore dive. And then we found a video that talked about this dive called Turtle City on the east side. So Jen booked that also. So tomorrow is actually going to be the only day when we do not have a boat dive, and we are completely on our own as I fall and break my ankle. We are being all fancy, and we are having a tortellini and wine, which is, I believe, a native Bonaire option. Apothic Red is the one that we ended up really like. And we basically came to a foreign country to have wine, cheese, and tortellini, just like we'd have back at home.